Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely incredible case file, the mystery of the client praise email with a missing forward. We're looking at a fascinating situation from a company that genuinely thought it had completely solved its toxic workplace issues. They'd even set up a public credit report to make sure everyone got recognized for their hard work. But, as you know, when you change the rules, those old toxic habits don't always just disappear. Often, they just get a lot quieter. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how one team used digital footprints, audit trails, and just pure, undeniable logic to trap a toxic corporate culture right in its tracks.
The core philosophy driving this entire story really boils down to this. When we think of corporate drama, we immediately picture, shouting matches in glass boardrooms or some executive giving a dramatic villain speech. But that's almost never how toxic culture actually returns. It sneaks back in super quietly, usually through some tiny administrative exception, a skipped meeting invite, a missing CC on an email thread. Defeating that kind of behavior doesn't require a loud argument. It just requires patience and a willingness to look incredibly closely at the documents themselves, because the truth isn't dramatic, it's documented, and it's sitting right there waiting for someone patient enough to read it.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the anomalous praise email.
Our investigation kicks off on a completely typical morning, when strategy lead Maya Carter is scrolling through her inbox and she spots a record that just refuses to stay polite. It's an email forwarding some major praise from a big client. Now, standard operating procedure here is pretty clear. An operations coordinator named Sofia, who honestly did all the heavy lifting on this project, should absolutely have been included in the forward chain when that praise was sent up to the executive leadership. But instead, Sofia's name was quietly snipped off right before the email went up the chain. Her credit for this huge victory was just subtly erased.
Well, when Maya brings this anomaly up, leadership immediately goes on the defensive and tries to brush it off using an absolute barrage of polished corporate buzzwords. They claimed the erasure was for alignment. They said the email was modified for polish and consolidation, just to give it more leadership presence. They even tried to spin it by saying that leaving Sofia off was somehow protecting the broader team from confusion. They literally tried to make a missing name sound like a generous favor to the team. But come on, the team knows better. People who erase credit rarely call it erasure.
Moving on to Section 2, traces in the records. The team obviously wasn't going to trust the mood of the room or those highly polished excuses. So they decided to start digging deep into the system's raw metadata. And Sofia, the very person whose name was erased, she doesn't panic. Not at all. Instead, she calmly opens the Properties panel in the Activity tabs on that exact email file. She starts asking the exact questions that the old toxic culture considers highly inconvenient. What changed? Who changed it? And who gained power when it changed? This right here is exactly how you bypass the corporate spin. You have to stop arguing about intentions and start looking at the definitive, logged action. Maya immediately takes Sofia's findings and builds this incredibly methodical proof map right on the glass wall of their conference room. She meticulously maps out the specific object, the owner of the file, the exact timestamp when that forward was altered, the glaring fact that there was zero approval for the change, the employee affected, and of course the possible beneficiary. Now, nothing on this map looks dramatic all by itself, but when you put it all together, it traps the panic. It gives that vague corporate fear a definitive, undeniable shape. It proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that this wasn't just some glitch. It was by design.
Which brings us to Section 3, evidence matching.
Things start to escalate sharply at this point. A senior leader steps in, trying to issue this subtle warning disguised as career advice, basically telling Sofia to be careful not to turn every tiny inconsistency into a personal war. The senior leaders are desperate to classify this whole thing as an isolated incident. You know the drill. Just a glitch, a one-time error, totally innocent mistake. But then, Nina, the executive assistant, drops an absolute bombshell. She pulls up calendar exports, saved drafts, meeting notes, and forwarding trails. This proves such a profound lesson. Invisible background work always leaves massive foreground footprints. The room desperately wanted this to be one isolated mistake, but Nina's background records bring undeniable context and expose a much larger pattern of behavior.
And the absolute breaking point happens when Aisha, an analyst looking at this with entirely fresh eyes, asks the one deeply uncomfortable question: who benefits? She asks the room, who benefits if this stays classified as harmless, and who loses if it gets corrected? That is the exact moment the energy in the entire room shifts. You see, office lies can only survive when the harm is kept vague and abstract. But the second Aisha asks that question, the vague corporate harm suddenly turns into a highly specific, totally undeniable motive.
Let's look at Section 4, Recovering the Original Path. Okay, so with the motive established and the pattern clearly proven by Nina's records, IT audit specialist Jordan steps up to make the digital system speak for itself. He projects the raw export for everyone to see. And he's not relying on any dramatic hacker tricks here, just cold, hard sequence. First, the raw export is accessed. Then, the owner field changes. Next, the timestamp moves. After that, the access path deliberately narrows, specifically locking out certain viewers. And finally, step 5, the original header path is completely isolated, showing the exact manipulation used to remove Sofia's name.
In this chillingly professional moment, Jordan's isolation of that original header path does exactly what the executives were terrified of. It explicitly names the exact executive who quietly erased Sofia's credit. The data provides external, completely undeniable proof. The people in the room can no longer hide behind coincidence, and they sure can't talk their way out of a raw IT log. The person who removed her is caught, completely and totally, in their own digital footprint.
As that evidence just sits incredibly heavy in the room, Maya drops this absolute devastating line. She looks right at leadership and says, "I am not asking you to trust me, I am asking you to trust the record you created." I mean, wow. This brilliantly forces the committee to stop judging the witnesses and start dealing directly with the hard, cold evidence. They can't argue with Maya's tone because the timestamp and that original header path are doing all the talking.
Which leads to our final section, Section 5. Changing the rules.
Naturally, the immediate instinct of any toxic office is to suggest a really quiet, private apology. Just a gentle email, maybe a revised note, a hushed promise that it won't happen again. But Maya entirely refuses. Private fixes might make managers feel comfortable, but they leave future employees completely exposed. She absolutely refuses to accept a silent patch for what was, let's be real, a public theft of credit. To ensure this literally never happens again, the Trust Committee forces through a permanent system repair. They define a brand new policy on the spot. Client praise must be logged to contributors, not just to the presenters. They are rebuilding the system from the ground up so that it protects the people instead of protecting the power.
And they didn't just suggest this, they literally wrote the lesson right into the workflow using strong, actionable verbs. Step 1, preserve the email. Step 2, attach a public reason code for any changes made. Step 3, notify the affected employee directly. And Step 4, log the correction publicly. This process absolutely guarantees that the next time someone even thinks about trying to steal credit, the system itself will trap them before they can even finalize the action.
Finally, the corrected record goes live on the company's internal network. Instead of a silent theft of hard work, this new record places Sofia's name exactly beside the project she actually built. Seeing this provides immense, palpable emotional relief to Sofia. It confirms that all the energy she spent surviving that initial disbelief was entirely worth it. More importantly, it proves that this company can actually learn from its mistakes and establish genuine, lasting accountability.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to take back to your own office tomorrow. Does your workplace quietly erase names, or does it actively build systems to remember them? Think about it. When someone's hard work goes missing in your daily operations, do your leaders cover for the thief with a bunch of polished buzzwords, or do they actually follow the audit trail to the truth? Because a workplace only truly becomes safe when names cannot be quietly removed and records cannot be politely ignored. Keep your eyes on the data.